forecast results in this now nice-looking report, Global Trade Outlook and Statistics, that we are presenting. The outlook for the global economy has slightly improved since our last forecast, but the pace of trade expansion in 2023 is still expected to be subpar. So we are now projecting a merchandise trade volume growth of 1.7% in 2023. The goods trade was remarkably resilient for most of 2022, despite a very challenging macro environment. During the first 3 quarters of 2022, year-on-year trade volume growth actually averaged 4.3%, but an abrupt decline in the fourth quarter then dragged growth down for the year to 2.7%. The downside risks to the forecast include the vulnerabilities that have been revealed in the banking sector of late. It appears that these recent banking failures in the US and Europe have been mostly contained, but rapidly increasing interest rates could create further strains in financial markets that then could, of course, also have implications for international trade. But there's also some upside potential, particularly from the relaxation of COVID-19 restrictions in China, particularly for services such as travel and transport. And of course, a peaceful end to the war in Ukraine and a reduction in broader geopolitical tensions would also greatly improve the outlook for the global economy.
The fact is that trade in digitally delivered services is booming. According to our estimates, global export reached $3.82 trillion in 2022. And what is impressive about these services is the pace of growth, an almost fourfold increase in value since 2005. Digitally delivered services accounted for 54% of global services trade, and what is more interesting is that they account for a fast-growing share of total trade, meaning goods and services together, which we estimated at 12% for 2022 from 8% just a decade ago. And this gives us a clear signal that the future of trade is services and it is digital.
Global GDP is expected to return to more normal levels, and trade growth is expected to rebound in line with that. The rebound is slightly stronger, but that's just part of the nature of trade. Trade tends to be more volatile. So when world GDP increases, trade tends to increase more. When world GDP declines, trade tends to move in the same direction, but just more so. So you get a kind of a whipsaw effect.
You briefly mentioned the weakness of the banking system, and you know how.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to this press conference on the launch of the WTO's Global Trade Outlook and Statistics report. And Barbara will introduce us to a new data set we have on digitally delivered services. We will then open it up to questions. I will note that we have interpretation in Spanish and French, both here in the room as well as online.
Projecting a merchandise trade volume growth of 1.7% in a bit more into the details now. And let me start with the outlook again for 2023. Most importantly, an improvement in the consensus outlook. It appears that these recent banking failures in the US and Europe have been mostly contained. Now turning to the situation in 2022, so what happened last year, why we expect GDP growth in 2023 to be so low and therefore very, very strongly downwards in downturns and very strongly upwards in